Every season is fire season. A new one is burning today as Boulder County looks at problems with the new alert system used over the weekend. Denver's police union, mad about a police brutality judgment, pulls a stunt without any discernible point. People with unwanted expertise on drug addiction have some thoughts about the plan to stop Colorado's fentanyl epidemic. And the steps of the state capitol will be a stage for political candidates to rally alongside the man who said this about Colorado's chief elections official.
You already committed a murder and we caught you.
A murder?
It's over.
The Pillow Guy is bringing his sham to Colorado tonight on Next. Here we are in Colorado's snowiest month with another wildfire burning today. No sooner than Saturday's wildfire looming over Boulder got knocked down. Mandatory evacuations have gone out for an area that's between Estes Park and Drake. That wildfire that started late this afternoon has gone through about a dozen acres south of Highway 34. There are no homes threatened, and firefighters seem to have a good handle on it. The weekend wildfire in Boulder County led thousands of people to evacuate, and it saw the city send out its first ever wireless emergency alert, WIA, the Amber Alert style. You blanket a certain area with texts and calls. The alerts that they wished that they had working during the Marshall Fire. Chaffee County sent out their first WIA last week, too. Now, Steve Steger found both alerts had some issues.
We were able to get this messaging out quickly as well.
People in Boulder got something this weekend that was missing during the Marshall Fire, a wireless emergency alert, or WIA. The city set up its WIA system about 2 weeks ago, and this weekend's NCAR fire gave it its first test.
It hit people, and it hit them fast, and they realized what it was, and they evacuated. They did what we asked them to.
Brad Reagan runs the City of Boulder's dispatch center, and he sent the messages this weekend.
I think the limitations of the system were shown. It definitely overshot our polygon by quite a bit, depending on the age of your handset and the technology you had.
Sure did. Reagan says he heard from people in Longmont, Lafayette, and Broomfield who got this message. Fast wildfire, Western Table Mesa Drive in Boulder. Evacuate now, with a link to Twitter. Only 90 characters, when most phones can receive a message up to 360. Reagan said it's the city's protocol to only send a 90-character message, not necessarily a 360.
It's not currently, but that may change when we do the after-action reports.
A similar problem happened last week, further south in Chaffee County. Officials there sent out their first WIA to order an evacuation in a small part of Buena Vista because of a wildfire.
We were getting reports of some phones in Teller County getting the message, some in Park.
Richard Atkins is the emergency manager there. He'll tell you a lack of cell towers and rugged terrain can often send the message out further than intended. But it doesn't explain why some people got a vague message about pre-evacuations that never listed a location or even a threat.
Everything that was inside the geofence that they set up got the full message. There were a lot of phones that received the message outside of that area that did not have location or any other information.
Now, Atkins says he believes that odd quirk with the pre-evacuation notice that went out to a lot of people had something to do with the vendor they used to send the message to the federal government, who then sends it out to all the phones in the area. They're working with them to try to figure that out. You will notice that in Boulder, it was the city that sent this message because it was in the city, not the county. Boulder County is still working to set up its wireless alerting system. They expect to have it online next month after they were originally approved for it, Kyle, back in August of 2019. They say disasters got in the way of them setting it up. There was one evacuation zone in the NCAR fire that was in Boulder County. The city was able to send that message out to the residents of El Dorado Springs on behalf of the county, since the county doesn't have it set up.
We talk about this a lot because it's important that it works, and people now in 2022 have an expectation that it is going to work, that if you are in danger, that the government has the ability to tell you in the palm of your hand, you're in danger.
Absolutely. And the thing I took away from both of these emergency officials who talked to us in this story today is that it did work because the message got to the people that needed it. Yes, it might have bled over. That's the purpose for this kind of education for the public. Like, this might sometimes happen. Look for more information. If you're in a weird spot and you get a message about an evacuation, you don't see smoke anywhere around you, it's probably a good idea to check in and see what that might be. But at least the messages, they say, are getting to the people who desperately need them most.
I appreciate all your reporting on this. Thank you, Steve. So some of you wondered aloud to us during that fire over the weekend why we weren't seeing any kind of large air tankers being used. I mean, fire was very close to a heavily populated area, and we've seen what that plus winds can do in Boulder County. We did eventually see some smaller single-engine planes working it and helicopters making drops. Boulder County's incident commander says it was really about picking the right aircraft for that situation.
Just like there's a proper tool for every job. And so where the fire was actively burning this morning and it wasn't really active, that's not really the tool to use for suppressing the fire. What we really need is that helicopter to get a little bit more specific, because they can fly overhead. They can put the water specifically where the firefighters on the ground are asking them to put it. It's a more precise tool versus putting retardant on the ground is a little bit more of a broad scale blunt tool. So that's really the reason why we had it still available to us. It is still in our pocket available. But again, it's all about managing risk versus benefit.
And using that slurry mixture near homes can be kind of dicey. There have been instances in California where homes have been covered by slurry during firefighting efforts. It gets that red stuff everywhere. The dye is not impossible to get off of surfaces, but it does take some work, and if it gets on people's skin, it can irritate your skin. The USDA, which is in charge of looking at this stuff, says generally the safety benefits of using the slurry far outweigh those risks. Families impacted by the Marshall Fire are getting an update tonight on all of the money that was raised to help them. It's a town hall, both virtual and in person, that'll begin soon. Community Foundation Boulder County has distributed millions of dollars to fire victims already. It included funding raised through your Word of Thanks microgiving campaign. Tonight, nonprofit is expected to outline their community panel's plans for how they'll use the remaining funds. Maybe you saw that some national media outlets have labeled Colorado as a COVID hotspot lately. Some have ranked us as having the second highest case rate in America. Colorado's public health leaders are disputing those numbers. Here's what's going on. New York Times and some other media outlets, they tend to pull their data from the CDC's website. State epidemiologist Dr. Rachel Hurley, he says that the data currently on the CDC's website are inaccurate and that the state has reached out to get those numbers fixed.
When CDC puts state level data on their website, they pull that data off of state websites. But unfortunately, the way that they do that includes backfilled cases and suggests they are current cases. And so there's some challenges right now with how Colorado data is being shown as we continue to work through a backlog of cases from the Omicron surge. So unfortunately, the data that's on CDC's website, which then I think goes on to be the source of information for some media sites, is not completely accurate right now. Again, we're working closely with CDC to correct that data.
So here's a gauge of where Colorado's COVID numbers stand right now. You see at the far right end of the graph, this is the positivity rate. It has ticked up a little bit in the last week and a half or so. Right now, 3.3% of tests done in the state are coming back positive. We were at 2.5% 10 days ago, still well below the 5% threshold. If wasting time was a crime, the head of Denver's police union could have arrested himself today. After a $14 million civil judgment against DPD for police brutality, that judgment came down Friday, the union president, Nick Rogers, called a press conference today, where he handed out a statement on pieces of paper and said, "No questions."
Here's my written statement. It's very self-explanatory, and it takes us to where we are.
Wait, so Nick, you're not going to say anything?
No. When I put this out, I said a written statement will be given, period.
You said a press conference.
Well, interpretation, guys.
The police union's written response to that multi-million-dollar judgment for police brutality during the protests following George Floyd's killing. The DPD union response claims that there would not be a downtown Denver if not for the actions of police. So every week around here, a whole bunch of you get together to do something good somewhere in our state. Each time, new project, new cause. Last week, I want to report back that you raised $25,000 for There With Care, a nonprofit that helps families with children facing a life-threatening illness. They get a referral from hospital social workers, and then in comes There With Care to support those families with gas cards, grocery deliveries, even help with rent if needed. Inflation has impacted them and their families quite a bit in the last year, along with an increased need in the community. So the $25,000 you came up with will help tremendously. Your Word of Thanks microgiving campaigns, as we approach the 2-year mark, have raised $8.7 million for Colorado's nonprofits. We'll be back on Wednesday with our next idea. A plan to address Colorado's fentanyl crisis is being criticized by former drug users now trying to help others overcome addiction.
The person that I was buying drugs from went to jail, I would just find it somewhere else.
And imagine your personal emails being made public. Embarrassing, right? Well, that's why you shouldn't plan a coup. A former CU professor is learning that the hard way. Next. As Colorado's legislators discuss a bill that would increase criminal penalties for distributing, dealing fentanyl, harm reduction advocates say the criminalization part of it is a distraction from real solutions. Harm reduction is the idea of focusing on making life safer for people who use drugs with the hope that then they'll be around, they'll be alive for the day that they decide to start recovery. Katie Eastman spoke with a woman who does this work after going through the process herself.
Yeah, Kyle, I spoke with Maggie Seldine over Zoom today. She drives all over rural western Colorado as the director of High Rockies Harm Reduction. Fentanyl is a huge issue in those communities too, but they don't have as many resources. She says people have to drive an hour and a half one way to get to a methadone clinic. But she is working to increase different types of compassionate peer support, something she believes is more effective than criminalization.
And that's working with a person daily, weekly, checking in with them all of the time, connecting them with relevant treatments and services, connecting them with housing, with food, with education, with childcare, with vocational opportunities, focusing on creating stability in every aspect of a person's life is way more likely to get them to recovery than criminal punishments and fines and jail time and treatment time will.
Maggie says she knows this firsthand. She told me when she was a drug and alcohol user, if her drug dealer went to jail, she'd just find another. If she was ticketed, she would feel more resentment towards systems that were trying to help. Her mom died of a heroin overdose when she was 15. Slowly, she found people who loved her and didn't push her into sobriety. She says that's what eventually helped her into recovery.
I promote harm reduction as a pathway to recovery because it's what saved my life. And I didn't even know that at the time. And I think that's actually very common for a lot of people. The idea of quitting everything all at once is very difficult to look at your life and say, I have to change everything about who I am and everything I'm doing is hard for anyone.
Maggie says there has always been a lack of understanding the mindset of people with substance use disorder. She knows it's difficult, Kyle, because that mind, it's not a rational one.
And perhaps something that folks can't even comprehend if they have never been through the throes of addiction or love somebody close to them who's been down that road.
Exactly. And Maggie said ultimately she realized what she was dealing with was a lot of mental health issues. So she says substance use disorder is a symptom of other behavioral health issues, not the cause. And she wants people to focus on that.
Appreciate you bringing us her perspective. Katie, thank you. A judge says a CU professor helped President Trump plan a coup that would have overturned American democracy. And the Russian oligarch with business and real estate ties to our state, he may have been poisoned for pushing peace. That's next. America's most famous election denier, not named Trump, is coming to Colorado. MyPillow guy Mike Lindell is going to hold a rally on the steps of the Colorado State Capitol, alongside Republican candidates for Senate and Secretary of State. Lindell's claimed to have enough evidence of voter fraud to send most Americans to prison. 300 million people, he says. He recently accused Colorado's Democratic Secretary of State Jena Griswold of, listen to what he said.
What Dominion and Jena Griswold did in Colorado, crimes against humanity, she will end up in prison, and more prison. But I got news for you, Jena. It's too late. You already committed a murder, and we caught you.
A murder?
It's over,
A
Jena.
murder? A murder?
No. Well, a murder. It's an analogy, Brad.
Oh, okay.
I mean, you've already, all you people out there, all you rotten journalists, but Mike Lindell says Jena Griswold committed murder. There's a good one for you, you rotten journalists. Take that soundbite. You know what?
They will. Trust me.
Yourselves look like fools.
Lindell's rally at the state capitol is April 5th. It'll include Republican Senate candidate and current state rep Ron Hanks and Republican Secretary of State candidate Tina Peters, who is currently under indictment for allegedly tampering with voting equipment. CU's former visiting conservative scholar John Eastman is going to have to turn over his emails to the House committee investigating the January 6th insurrection. Judge ruled that he drew up the plans to keep President Trump in power. Those Eastman emails come from when he was with Chapman University. Eastman wrote the memo outlining how Republicans could stage a coup and keep President Trump in power. The panel subpoenaed his records, including his emails from the time that he was working with the former president. Eastman had tried to block that. He claimed that the emails are protected by attorney-client privilege. Yes, generally, but not if you're talking about doing crimes. And today, a federal judge said that, quote, the illegality of the plan was obvious. It's important to note that this ruling came down in a civil case where the burden of proof is lower than a criminal case. A Russian billionaire who owns property here in Colorado may have been poisoned because he was trying to help peace talks move along between Russia and Ukraine. The BBC is reporting that Roman Abramovich suffered symptoms of a suspected poisoning after a peace talk that he helped broker earlier this month. The talk was held on the Ukraine-Belarus border on March 3rd. Abramovich reportedly suffered sore eyes and peeling skin, all these bodily reactions. 2 Ukrainian peace negotiators had the same poisoning symptoms. The BBC says Abramovich has since recovered. We talked to you here about all of his various connections. He most famously owns the Chelsea Soccer Club, which he's selling. He also owns a big chunk of the company Evraz, as in Evraz Steel down in Pueblo. He also reportedly owns 2 mansions up in Snowmass. He's been sanctioned by some European governments. Questions have popped up about why the U.S. has been slow to similarly sanction him. The Ukrainians have asked President Biden to hold off because Abramovich has been working as an intermediary between them and Russia. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen did tell CNBC last week she holds open the possibility that Abramovich could face sanctions in the future.
What a way to start the week with sunshine and temperatures near 80 degrees. It only lasts today, though. We've got a storm coming in tomorrow, cooler weather, and the chance for some beneficial rain. The rain and snow already moving into western Colorado tonight. Denver stays dry tonight through the drive tomorrow morning, with rain developing during the afternoon and for the evening drive tomorrow night. It's overnight Tuesday night. We see that rain mix with snow through Wednesday morning, and then the whole system is out of here. 4 to 8 inches of snow in the high country tomorrow, with a winter weather advisory posted and concerns for high fire danger as a red flag warning remains in effect for southeastern Colorado. We'll be cooler with clearing skies Wednesday after the snow showers move out. 60s with sunshine Thursday, maybe a brief shower on Friday, and then a beautiful weekend coming up. Sunshine and 60s.
Today's news wasn't entirely horrible. A bunch of it was. So we'll make time for something that isn't horrible. Plus your feedback next. Getting to take full advantage of Colorado's first fall spring and its wild weather? Yeah, it's something that's not horrible. You know, it can be annoying sometimes, the snow one day, 60s the next routine that we see here in March, but I don't know, my girls love it, and so does Libby's 16-month-old son, Ryan. Playing with the snow in the sun at their place in Parker. Playing with the snow in the sun. Not everybody across the country gets to do that. We should be grateful. That's a pretty decent way to go through life. Janet writes into us tonight to say, I live north of Boulder, but was okay with getting the emergency notification on Saturday. Janet says, better too many sent out than not enough. Bob writes as well, as far as emergency notification bleed over, I would much rather get it and not need it than need it and not get it. Absolutely understand that perspective. We don't want people ignoring those alerts, though, if they get too many. So we want them dialed in as tightly as possible. See you next time.